Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancement Spring Webinar Series. To just go ahead and start things off, just wanted to say that our commitment is to education during the impacts of COVID-19. During this unprecedented time, we know that you've been making adjustments to your organization. Our commitment is to continue to support you with plant healthcare science and education that will help your organization continue to grow. And just wanted to make a plug for some of the other webinars that are going to be coming up through our spring webinar series. The next one is on Tuesday, April 21st at the same time, which will have Jeff Haberman talking about how the city of Rochester has managed Emerald Ash Borer. So if you're attending this webinar, I'd highly suggest for you to tune into Jeff's on Tuesday as well. And just wanted to say, if you would like additional virtual training on this or any other PHC topic, feel free to schedule time with your TM or arboriculturist, or go ahead and send us an email at info@treecarescience.com. So to address some housekeeping items, I'd encourage everyone attending this webinar to make sure that you conduct a safety assessment of your surroundings. Please be aware of any trip hazards around you. I know that most of us are going to be attending this remotely from our houses, so just make sure that you're aware of your surroundings. I also encourage you all to ask questions. Please enter your questions in the box seen on the right, and we'll try to address all of them at the end of the presentation. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to all of you at the conclusion once it's been uploaded, so feel free to share it. Lastly, I will cover the process to obtain CEUs at the end of this presentation. So without further ado, let's go learn about some Emerald Ash Borers. So this presentation is going to be everything that you wanted to know about Emerald Ash Borer and more. I will have my contact information at the end of this slide as well. But before I delve into things, just want to give you a background into who's the guy that's talking to you right now. Well, I grew up in a small town just south of Green Bay, Wisconsin, but received a bachelor's degree in ecology and environmental biology at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and then proceeded to move south to warmer weather to obtain a master's degree in forest ecology from Texas Tech University, where I did my thesis on looking at resin ducks and pine trees in relation to their defense against bark beetles in West Texas mountains. 3 days after defending my thesis, I decided that I needed to have winters back in my life and moved to Minnesota, where I started working as a plant healthcare technician at Rainbow Tree Care. I gained a lot of firsthand experience of identifying various insect and fungal pathogens affecting trees within the ornamental landscape, and got to learn a lot about the various ways to control them. After a couple of months of doing that, I was promoted to a project manager role for our research and development department at Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements, where I got to conduct research trials on pests and pathogens all across the United States and collaborate with researchers and scientists throughout the world to find solutions to problems that we currently do not have solutions to. And as of last July, I accepted the role of lead technical advisor for the company. And I get to take all of that knowledge that I've learned throughout my time in the field and in research and speak to audiences throughout the country to help others learn more about plant healthcare. Also, just wanted to note that this picture was taken before when barbershops were actually still open. Currently, I'm rocking the COVID-19 haircut where you give your wife the hair clippers and you get one option for a haircut and it has to be short and same length all around. But just want to get a little bit into our background. Rainbow Tree Care started as a company by preserving elms. And from this, we learned how to achieve predictable results in plant healthcare. And then after that, we added pruning and removal services. Now, the company got its name from the first street where they sold elm treatments, which was Rainbow Lane in Minnetonka, Minnesota, back in 1976. Now we're nearly 200 full-time employees, and we also have a tree, lawn, and pest expert division. We started as PHC only. It was only later in the 80s that we added pruning and stump removal, but we're still known as the premier plant health healthcare company in town. And through 2019, we have 3,000 elms, 4,000 oaks, and over 50,000 ash trees currently under protection in the Twin Cities alone. But in 1997, our founder was tired of using products that did not work with no support. Thus, Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements was started. And here at Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements, we focus on research and product development specific to tree and shrub care. And everything that we do is about achieving predictable results. And we have territory arborists and arborologists spread all throughout the country. So if you ever need assistance, someone should be able to provide you with the expertise necessary for you to succeed in your business. So we like to think of ourselves as rainbow companies, and with that, we have over 40 years of tree healthcare experience, and we have a lot of really qualified individuals working for us, as well as 52 seasonal employees. And one of the big things as well as I had indicated earlier, we have 50,000 ash trees under our protection in the Twin Cities alone, and in 2019, we injected over 25,000 of those alone. Our goal at the end of the day is to help you achieve predictable results, and we accomplish that in a variety of ways, but our foundation is always rooted in the science and creating science-backed solutions for you. I do the vast majority of statistical analyses for the company, and if the data doesn't indicate significant differences, then I don't recommend it as a viable treatment. But understanding the science helps us create the protocols, which involves diagnostics, treatment strategies, and expectation. From there, we implement training, and this is done in the field through sharing protocols and helping actually conduct the applications. And lastly, one of the cornerstones of our company is technical support, which is providing real-time field support for you out there, so you never have to be stuck out without an answer, because time is money. So how do we accomplish this? Well, we do a lot of research. Science is the foundation and required for predictability. And so we do this with internal trials, but we also partner with leading industry and university scientists. And this research is conducted in labs and nurseries, but also the main thing is the majority of it happens in real world growing conditions, because we want to ensure that any protocols that we suggest to you can be replicated and you can obtain the predictable results necessary to communicate that over to clients. And we do these trials across the United States because there's differences between the environment in California to Florida to Minnesota all the way over to Maine. And so we want to make sure that you guys get predictable results at the end of the day. So a little into our background with Emerald Ash Borer is we were a signatory on the EAB Coalition in 2011. And currently, as I had indicated earlier, we have 50,000 ash trees under our protection, and we've trained hundreds of cities and arborists to achieve the predictable results. And so at the end of the presentation today, there are 5 things that I want you to be able to take away. First is recognizing the signs of Emerald Ash Borer. Second, understanding why taking action sooner versus later is important. Third, determining what treatment options work for your situation. 4, considerations when doing tree injections. And lastly, understanding some of the best practices for EAB tree injection. So let's dig into things. What is Emerald Ash Borer? Well, Emerald ash borer, otherwise known as EAB, is a small wood borer that feeds on ash trees. It came over from Asia and is not native to North America, and native ash trees have no defense against EAB. We stand to lose all of our ash trees to EAB unless we do something about it. Now, this beetle is usually bronze or golden green with dark metallic emerald green wing covers. You usually won't see the adults flying around though. They tend to be a little bit more elusive. The adults are slender and can be about 1/4 to 1/2 inch in length, and they only have a short period of activity, generally around 3 to 6 weeks. And they're usually more active during the day, during sunny and warm days, and the adults will hang out in bark crevices of ash trees or on foliage during the rain, heavy cloud cover, or when temperatures reach above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The adults can generally be found most years beginning from late May into mid-August, but the peak for them tends to be around mid to late June. Now, interesting thing about them is EAB in southern climates such as Texas only take about 1 year to complete its life cycle. But in some of the farther northern states and even into Canada and in areas where populations are lower, some of the research has found that it sometimes takes 2 seasons for an emerald ash borer to complete its life cycle. But the big thing with this pest, and the name kind of alludes to it, but the life cycle revolves around ash trees. And which leads me into my next point, that this is the most destructive pest in the industry. And here is a current map of the current infestations that are throughout the United States. And there are new counties being added to this on a monthly basis. Here in Minnesota, the Austin, Minnesota just got added a couple weeks ago. So this is constantly spreading. And if you have native ash trees in an area, eventually they could be at risk if they're not currently being infested by this pest. So I'm going to get into some of the symptoms of what to look for. And one of the biggest identifying features, and these are typical in beetles in the Bupressidae family, which is what emerald ash borer is under. As the adults chew their way from under the bark and exit, this is the evidence that they leave behind. And you'll typically see these on tree limbs and trunks. It is also important to note the relative size. They're only about 1/8 of an inch wide, so they aren't very noticeable from a distance. So make sure to look closely for these. Another prominent symptom are the S-shaped feeding tunnels, and these are the evidence left behind from the EAB larvae as they feed. Notice the lighter sawdust-like excrement inside of the tunnels as well, otherwise known as frass. So EAB are known as frass packers, not to be mistaken with the greatest football team ever, the Green Bay Packers. That's my one dad joke for the webinar, so please excuse it. But another big indicator that you can sometimes see from a little bit further away is woodpecker activity. And this is noticed by marks in the tree called flecks, which are the marks left behind when woodpeckers are trying to get at that larva inside. And these usually serve as an early warning sign for emerald ash borer. Another symptom of EAB is vertical splits in the bark, and these will often appear directly above a larval feeding gallery, so you'll be able to see some of those S-shaped galleries as well inside of it. One of the telltale signs and a symptom that is used to identify whether a tree can or cannot be treated is canopy thinning. As the tree continuously gets fed on by the beetles, it is no longer able to move water and nutrients throughout the canopy, and it begins to thin out from the top and works its way down until it eventually dies. The last symptom I'm going to talk about are epicormic shoots. This is probably the biggest telltale sign that I use to identify EAB activity from a distance. Now, these shoots often appear at the base of trees as a last-ditch effort to try to survive. And upon initial inspection, one may think that these trees are all right because they are comprised of large, lush green leaves in these shoots. But if you're seeing this on an ash tree, there's usually been too much damage and the tree is about to die. Now, one of the biggest issues with emerald ash borer is that the populations build up undetected, and it takes time for symptoms to show up. And once the visual symptoms do start showing up that people would call you about, the damage has already been done and it's too late. And so we can see here in the first tree, they have year 1 where there's no thinning. You get down to that second year, there's moderate thinning, but for the most part, people can explain that away for other reasons and they're not going to be paying attention to it. But fast forward to year 3 and 4, you have heavy thinning, which eventually is going to lead to tree death. So here's just an infographic kind of summarizing everything together, showing some of that symptom progression. In those first couple of years, you have small larvae present, but as those years go on, you have larger larvae that become present, and you have emerging adults, and those larvae start increasing in number. And so you go from having 0 symptoms to years about 5 through 6, where all of a sudden dead trees are present. So how does this spread? Well, these adults are generally poor flyers. They're not going to move far from where they hatch and come out of the initial tree. And they usually spread only about 2 miles or less. So, but we've been finding that new infestations are generally found near campgrounds. And this is, they generally spread through movement of nursery stock. Firewood is a huge one, as well as some of the ash waste products that go about. So if you take anything away from this presentation, please don't be the guy in the cartoon and transport infected ash wood to other areas. You know, this is one of the biggest ways that it's been spread. So what's the impact of this? Well, eventually it's going to kill all ash trees unless something is done. Additionally with this, some of the impacts are falling branches, which can become a hazard for public safety. And also these dying ash are really dangerous to remove, and it's very difficult to put a climber in these trees safely. So a lot of companies are going about more mechanical removals, which is going to then increase some of the cost to remove some of these trees. Additionally with this, the impact is rapid tree death. And notice the epicormic shoots that are present at the base of some of these trees on the left. As I was saying, that's some of the last ditch efforts that the tree will use to survive. But this is how the ash borer can be so devastating. Dr. Deb McCullough is an entomology professor at Michigan State University who helped develop the SLAM model. SLAM meaning slow ash mortality. And the reason why she did that is because we noticed that it takes a while for the EAB population to build up and for symptoms to manifest throughout a community. But if nothing is done to stop the process, the population explodes exponentially and the damage becomes really hard to mitigate. So you see in the first couple of years of EAB becoming established in an area, you don't have much death. But as you move into years 8 and above, the damage increases tremendously. And here's just an example of what a 2-year time frame can do. This was taken in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and you see on the picture to the left, everything was, leafing out well. The canopies are looking pretty good. But fast forward over to 2011, and almost every tree on this boulevard is dead, and this needs to be removed. And that's going to completely alter what that landscape is going to look like. So why does the population of this insect build up so rapidly? Well, one female emerald ash borer will lay between 75 to 90 eggs per year. And the biggest thing is these eggs have a 90% survival rate. And about half of these eggs are female. So we're going to do some math. So if you have one emerald ash borer who lays 80 eggs, what is that going to look like in 5 years' time? So you start with that healthy tree. Year 1, you have that one emerald ash borer that lays 80 eggs. When you get to year 2, all of a sudden that becomes 3,200 eggs. Let's fast forward to later. Year 3, you're up to 128,000 eggs. Year 4, you're now over 5.1 million. And then when you get to year 5 and above, that number explodes to almost 205 million eggs. And the impact of that is rapid tree death. And with that, most ash trees just die in just a few years. So to dig a little bit into our EAB research background, we started doing research back in 2004. And at the time, we had 21 long-term, multiple-year trials. And we have evaluated 14 different technologies, as well as 59 experimental treatments. And research for this is still ongoing as well. We're still trying to learn more about this pest. But a lot has changed since 2002, when it was first discovered. At the time, treatments were considered too expensive. They didn't work, and removing trees can slow the spread. Fast forward 18 years, and we've learned that some of these couldn't be farther from the truth. Treatments are far less expensive than removal. Proper treatment is highly effective, and removing trees does not slow the spread. So treatments are an effective tool in an EAB management plan. And they are the only option outside of removal for protecting singular trees. But it is important to evaluate a few factors when determining the best treatment though. You want to make sure that the products have been thoroughly researched with data. There are certain active ingredients that have been found to be effective against emerald ash borer. Make sure to use the right one. Dose is incredibly important because if you underdose, then you aren't going to be getting the correct amount of product in the areas that you are looking to protect. Also, the application method is important because certain active ingredients require different application methods, and sometimes certain application methods are the only way to accomplish a treatment. You also want to make sure that the active ingredient is active at the time that the larvae are feeding. Cost is a big factor, especially for those within the municipal setting. You want to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. And lastly, making sure to apply products responsibly and within the label to minimize tree and environmental impacts. So the 3 treatment methods that have been found to be effective are soil applications, bark sprays, and tree injections. And to determine which one to use, you can ask yourself some of those questions that are listed on here to identify the best product for you. And the 3 active ingredients that have been found to be the most effective against emerald ash borer are imidacloprid, dimethefron, and Emamectin benzoate. Imidacloprid can be applied as a soil application, whereas dimethefron can be applied as both a soil application and a systemic bark spray. And the one that I'll spend the most time talking about later is Emamectin benzoate, and this can only be applied as a tree injection. Here at Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements, we have all of these products available for you to create a toolbox approach for managing the pest. You don't have to just use one method. And so here is a canopy evaluation card that was created by Smithley and Davis at Michigan State and helps provide a visual guideline for percentage canopy loss. Now this is useful when determining which trees to treat and which ones to remove. And I'll delve further into that in the next slide. And I know that this might be a little difficult to see on the screen, but you can find this paper available on Google Scholar if you search Smithley and Davis. But this is what we're looking for when determining whether to do a treatment. You generally want to have 30% or less of canopy decline in a given year. And this is where we found acceptable, predictable results in being able to actually save that tree. If that tree is exhibiting symptoms greater than 30% canopy decline, sometimes we've been able to bring that tree back, but you're outside of that window of obtaining predictable results. So it's important to evaluate cumulative decline over multiple years, but you're looking for 30% or less canopy decline. So the first product that I'm going to talk about today is Zytect, which is our soil applied imidacloprid. And I'll provide an overview here and delve deeper into application methods later in the presentation. So to emphasize on why rate is important, I'm going to talk about a trial that we conducted with Dr. Dan Herms, formerly with Ohio State University. And this was done in Toledo, Ohio. We were the first ones to actually come out with a product that could be treated at twice the standard rate with imidacloprid. And this was because we were finding that when trees were treated at the standard rate at the time, they were still experiencing decline, as indicated in that picture on the right. But when we doubled that rate, we were actually able to obtain predictable results in protecting that tree. And here's just another photo of that trial where we can see that using that 2 times rate, we're able to obtain predictable results and save those trees. And this picture was taken 1 year after the peak. And additionally, if used correctly, it can protect the trees from the borer, as evidenced here with these trees being treated for 5 years and still holding strong. The next product I'm going to talk about today is Transtect, which is a 70% dimethefron product that is the only dimethefron product that comes in water-soluble packets. So here's a research trial we conducted in Mount Prospect, Illinois. These trees were treated at the low rate, which is 6 packets per gallon on an annual basis. And Here you can see a picture showing a treated tree versus an untreated. And this is 1 year after the treatment, when you can see on the left that untreated control is thinning incredibly, and it's going to be past the point of being able to save that tree. Whereas the Transtect treated tree on the right is still going strong. And timing is important, though, with Transtect, as Transtect moves faster into the tree relative to that of Zytect, but the residual is shorter. So because of that, fall treatments aren't as effective as the active ingredient wears off by the time that it needs to be in the plant. So timing is important when using these insecticides. But in this picture, this shows how even when you have some damage the prior year, once protecting the tree with Transtect, the tree can kind of compartmentalize some of that wounding and produce healthy growth on top of that. And so you can see on the bottom, you can still see kind of that window where there was some feeding happening, but that new tissue is not being attacked. So the last product I'm going to talk about, and the one that has been used as an industry standard for municipal treatments throughout the country, is Mectinite, which is a 4% Emamectin benzoate product. And this comes in a 1-quart bottle that has a dosing chamber with it. It's a 4% Emamectin benzoate solution, similar to others. And the biggest thing is this as a signal word, it's a caution label, which is different from some of the other ones that have a warning label. And with this, the efficacy for this demonstrates equivalency to triage as well as Arboriculture. And the uptake is equal to that of Arboriculture and equal to or faster than that of triage and triage G4. And to show some examples with this, this table compares the speed of injection for Mectinite and triage. And this is an average of 4 trees per treatment. The Mectinite applications went up almost 5 times faster than that of triage on similar sized trees. And so here are some of the pictures showing how effective Mectinite treatments can be, with the tree on the left being treated in 2013 and still going strong in 2015, whereas the one directly right next to it is completely dead and not leaving out at all. So back in 2008, we started a long-term research trial evaluating all 3 of the aforementioned products that went on for 6 years. So here's some of the information about that trial. I just have a map of the research trial kind of showing where this was at. And I want you to remember this photo right here. This was when the trial began and everything looked pretty good. So to get in some of the photos, these are just a couple of representative pictures. This is 4 years after the implementation of the trial, and you can see that Zytect applications are still protecting that tree, whereas an untreated right next to that is completely dead. This is 6 years after the beginning of the trial, and similar things are happening. You're getting that protection with that spring Transtect and that Zytect being applied at that 2 times the rate, whereas the untreated right next to that is completely dead. And remember that photo that I just showed you in the beginning of the trial? This is the aftermath of that. Over 6 years' time, all of those ash trees in that area were lost. And this really highlights the importance of an effective management plan. Otherwise, this becomes a huge issue to remove all these trees in time. But to start to summarize all the treatment options, here's an infographic to help break everything down. So Transtect and Zytect are great options for trees that are under 25 inches DBH and under low to moderate EAB pressure. Generally, I like to use it around the low EAB pressure. But if you are encountering high EAB pressure or are dealing with larger trees, Mectinite is going to be your best option. The other added benefit is that Mectinite will control round-headed borers as well, but you don't need to use just one method. But when implementing any EAB management plan, being proactive is absolutely crucial. As more time goes on without action, your treatment options decrease while ash mortality increases. And this is evidenced here. And this is kind of using some of the ash mortality graph that I showed earlier. And as more of them die, there's less that you're able to actually save. Additionally, within a municipal setting, proactive management can help flatten the curve and reduce the number of removals to help municipalities avoid having to deal with a large amount of removals that happen during the EAB peak death curve. And so it can be used as an effective tool for that. But you may be thinking, what trees should I be protecting from emerald ash borer? Well, mature trees will typically provide the most benefits when deciding which trees to preserve and which ones to remove. Other factors to consider are trees in prominent locations that would significantly alter the landscape if removed. Additionally, some trees have historical value and are worth protecting, and some trees can be really close to the house or in difficult to access locations. Thus, it's easier to preserve the tree rather than remove them. Also, some municipalities have canopy initiatives, and removing a tree and replanting would take years to regain that same canopy cover. And lastly, treatments can be an excellent tool to help stage removals at a manageable pace and avoid the impacts of the EAB death curve, because most municipalities don't have the manpower or the budget to deal with the level of removals that are necessary that happen at that time of that death curve. So a common question is, when should you start treatments? Well, if you are within 15 miles of an infestation, you should absolutely be treating. If not, your trees are at risk to be attacked. Trees greater than 15 miles away are considered lower risk, but all it takes is one person to carelessly transport EAB to an area, and that low risk area can easily turn into a new population and become a high risk area. It is important to note as well that it takes a while for new infestations to start showing symptoms in an area. So monitoring is absolutely crucial in those outlier areas. So here is a nice infographic to show when you should be applying which treatments. Zytect can be applied in early spring and late fall, but summer treatments are not as effective as it takes a while for that active ingredient to be fully taken up. It can be applied on the ground as long as the ground isn't frozen. Transtect, on the other hand, is faster moving and is a great option in the summertime when you're looking to have a rapid treatment and weren't able to hit it earlier. But as I had shown earlier, fall treatments are not effective with that because you won't have the active ingredient present in the tissue when you need it. Lastly, Mectinite is a great option to treat year-round once leaf out begins, and unlike the other two, it provides at least 2 years of protection. The biggest thing is you want to have peak amounts of insecticide in the xylem of the tree when the eggs hatch and the larvae start to feed, and that's in that time frame that I've indicated on here. So, to delve a little bit further into these type of applications with Zytect, this is applied at the base of the tree because that is where the bulk of the fibrous roots are. And this is just mixed with water, and water is just the carrying agent for that. And this can be applied with, as shown here with the HTI soil injection, but you can also do a soil drench directly around that base of the tree. But you want to be trying to get as close to that trunk to hit those fibrous roots. Additionally, with bark sprays, this is how Transtect can be applied. And this can be done with a manual backpack as well as a gas-powered backpack as well, but I tend to like to do this more with a manual pump backpack to control the output. And what you're going to do is you're going to spray until runoff from the base of the tree, the bottom, to about 4.5 feet above. You're going to apply evenly around the trunk, and 1 gallon of ready-to-use solution generally covers about 60 to 85 inches of DBH. The last one is with tree injection, and this is how Mectinite is applied. And Mectinite, as I indicated earlier, is a 4% Emamectin benzoate solution. And what's great with this is it has a wide range of rates that you can use based on situations. If you're in lower pressure areas, sometimes you can get away with doing a lower rate, but if you have a completely healthy tree right next to a completely infested tree that's almost dead, you might want to consider going with a higher rate in order to ensure some of that rapid response and protection. Now, whenever you are doing tree injections, you want to be targeting the sapwood. And this is because the sapwood allows for better distribution of the chemical throughout the tree. Additionally, the sapwood is more located near the root flare, and the root flare grows at about 1.5 times the trunk, so it's able to compartmentalize any sort of wounding at a much faster rate than you would be seeing if you went higher up in that tree. So what about another question that's come up more recently is, what about higher concentrations of Emamectin benzoate? Are they faster? Do you get more into the tree? Well, I just wanted to show you, last year I conducted a research trial looking at timing differences between injections with mectinite and triage R10 to examine uptake times better. I injected R10 straight and also diluted to a 1-to-1 ratio with water, which is indicated in the word dilute in the graph. My study had concluded that there are no significant differences between treatment time between using mectinite, a 4% solution, or a 10% Emamectin benzoate solution. Additionally, the Q-Connect performed just as well on an individual tree basis relative to injections done with QuickJet Air. And that's just on an individual tree basis, because most people operationally will go out with 2 Q-Connects. So you can start setting one up while the first one is finishing, allowing you to optimize on operational efficiency. Overall message I want you to take away from this graph is that mectinite injects just as fast as a higher concentration formulation, and the Q-Connect performs just as well as a compressed air system. Plus, you don't have to use plugs in order to accomplish the injections. Now, to get within that same study, I also analyzed the relative amounts of Emamectin benzoate present in the leaf tissue 6 weeks after treatment. And the reason for this is the concept of having higher concentrations of active ingredient in a product is not a new idea. Back in 2015, we evaluated a 10% as well as a 20% Emamectin benzoate solution, but we found that it wasn't moving into the canopy as well as a 4% solution. So we decided to not move forward with the product because we are all about creating predictable results, and we couldn't obtain that with those higher concentrations. So last year, I conducted a similar study with triage R10 by evaluating it diluted 1-to-1 with water and also straight up. In both instances, mectinite significantly outperformed that product. And so what we concluded is that injecting low volumes of high concentrated material resulted in poor distribution throughout the tree. If you want to ensure that you are treating, the trees that you're treating are going to be having protection throughout the entire canopy, the only way to ensure that is to use a 4% Emamectin benzoate solution. And so there are some concerns with tree injection, and because whenever you're doing it, you want to minimize wounding. And Kevin Smith and Phil Lewis published a paper back in 2005 detailing some of the damage that can happen with some different application methods, showing some damage with the wedgel as well as incorrect setting of the plugs. And a common occurrence with wedgel applications that you'll find is bark blowout. If you visit these sites the next year, this is a common site that you'll see. Additionally, lost my slide there. Just give me 1 second. All right, we're back. Another consideration is if you choose to use system with plugs, proper training is important. If they are set too deep, you'll have limited uptake and the efficacy is decreased. On the flip side, if they are set too shallow, bark cracking is a common sight. Now, I want to say that plugs were absolutely a necessary component to tree injections back when original formulations of Emamectin benzoate were highly viscous and took a long time to inject, so they had to be sealed in manually. But nowadays, with advancements in formulations, as seen with mectinite, plugs are no longer a necessary component to accomplish injections. And to highlight some of the issues with it, recently the city of Quincy, Illinois had to deal with a PR nightmare because the EAB applications that were made by the contracted company caused excessive wounding. And this is just an example of why proper training is important. So if you are going to, whatever application method that you use, you want to make sure that you're being properly trained to apply those to avoid some of this wounding. And so I wanted to show our Q-Connect system. So the USDA APHIS was doing injections, but were frustrated that you had to use plugs when doing the injections. So they decided to try to do injections without them. So we worked with them to develop a plugless injection system that minimizes wounding and saves time by eliminating an entire step of having to actually set those plugs. And so here I have some photos of some locally treated trees 1 year after treatment comparing plugs versus no plugs. When doing injections with a smaller diameter drill and allowing compartmentalization to occur without a foreign object impeding it, the wounds can heal faster. So I don't want to remain ignorant to, with tree injection, because tree injection does cause wounding, but there are definite reasons for using it within the toolbox approach. One of the reasons is it reduces exposure to the applicator as well as the environment. And in some cases, it is the only way to apply an insecticide to a tree. Additionally, if a tree is really close to a structure or you have compact soils is next to water, this is one of the only ways to accomplish applications. And so I just wanted to do a treatment recap of some of the pros and cons of some of these products. With Zytect and Transtect, these are best used as preventative measures and under low EAB pressure. Additionally, these are great for trees under 25 inches DBH. And the reason for treating trees under that is because you generally will find some pounds per acreage restrictions for some of those larger trees and having multiple trees within an area. The pros of these are fast and easy to apply. Zytect is very cost effective and it has a longer application window. Transtect is a great just-in-time treatment as well. But the cons of these is Zytect has slower uptake. It's got a long residual, but it takes about 3 to 6 weeks to be fully taken up within the tree. On the other hand, with Transtect, you cannot do fall treatments with that because you won't have the active ingredient present when you need to have peak amount of insecticides to protect that tree. So to get into trunk injections with mectinite, these are great 2-year protection therapeutic treatments. And we're getting at least 2-year protection with this, with some municipalities moving to a 3-year cycle to kind of help stretch out some of the budgets. Now, the pros of this is these protect both small and large trees, and these can be applied where soil treatments are not possible. The cons for this is whenever you're doing tree injections, you need to have specialized equipment, which can limit the accessibility of some people to do these treatments. Additionally, whenever you're doing tree injections, you are going to be wounding the trees. So you want to make sure that you're minimizing that impact as much as possible by going with a plugless system and by putting in smaller holes in a tree to allow it to compartmentalize faster. So I just wanted to highlight a case study of our own local service company and kind of some of the savings that we had switching over from Triage G4 to mectinite, because not all formulations are created equal. And so with this is comparing 2018 to 2019. And so in 2018, we are treating about 55.15 inches per on-site labor hour. And when we switched over to mectinite, we treated a lot more DBH inches in a season, and the amount that we were able to treat increased significantly to 80.42 inches. And this resulted in an over 45% increase in overall improvement. Plus, to treat that much, that many DBH inches would have required between 100 and 200,000 plugs. And so we saved over $100,000 cash by not using plugs, and we had 0 trees that had bark splitting due to improperly sealed plugs. And to quote a colleague of mine that has a plethora of experience in this area, he would say, "That's straight cash, homie." That's my other joke. I apologize for that one too. But speaking of that colleague, he helped write a piece of literature that has been influential to the tree care industry. And so we have tree injection best management practices in arboriculture. And this was released in 2016. and is produced and published by ISA and reviewed by 18 industry experts. And this was co-authored by Dr. Tom Smiley with Bartlett Labs and Sean Bernick, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements. If you are new to tree injection or are looking for some of the best management practices to do for this, this is a great resource to learn from. And also wanted to highlight some of the additional EAB management support materials that we have available for you. We have diagnostic guides that you can use, and you can access those from our website at the link above. Additionally, we've created some sell sheets that are available, and these are kind of customer-facing materials that can educate your customers on what Emerald Ash Borer is and how you can help. And the biggest thing that I'm really excited to talk about and let you guys know about today is we are going to have an Emerald Ash Borer municipal management guide that is almost done. We're in the last review stages for this. And once that is available, we will let all of you know about this. This will be a completely free resource that will help you understand, if you're a municipality, it'll help you understand the best ways to manage it. And then even for commercial tree care companies, this is a great resource to understand, what is the process of how a municipality decides which trees to treat, how to treat them. And with this, we can help you identifying the best ways to go about this. So if you want more information, you can schedule a virtual training with your territory manager or an arborologist. I also wanted to highlight our technical support. We have PHC diagnostics that we provide. This is identification as well as management recommendation. We're happy to answer any sort of product questions, help you troubleshoot the equipment, and provide actual field support and help you with any sort of ordering. You can do this via phone, text, email. Otherwise, we also have a live chat. The last thing was kind of identifying the process with ISA CEUs and how to obtain this. And so with some of the methods that ISA is going about this, you can actually self-report this, and you'll receive an email with instructions and documents for self-reporting. But once you receive that email, what you'll do is you'll go to the ISA's homepage, and you'll go to My ISA, go to My Dashboard, and follow the instructions provided in the email and attach the certificate of attendance and copy the email. And this is going to contain the abstract. Lastly, I wanted to thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate you tuning in today. And my contact information is on there. Feel free to send me an email or give me a call or text. I'm happy to discuss any of this with you in person, and I'd be happy to address any questions at this time.
All right, thanks, Eric. I do have a couple questions coming already, so we will start with, do you know how the Asian ash trees resist the emerald ash borer?
That is a good question. A lot of times what happens with these kind of native interactions between, like the native ash tree and the emerald ash borer is that native ash tree has kind of developed some defense mechanisms to deal with it. Whenever you introduce a new species to an area, then the whole thing with invasive insects is our ash trees have not co-evolved with dealing with this pest. So they don't have any sort of defense mechanisms to help keep that population in check. So when the emerald ash borer gets to our trees, it's able to reproduce at such a rapid rate, and we don't have native predatory insects to keep that population in check. So that's kind of one of the big reasons why the emerald ash borer has been so, it's been such an issue here, but it's not as much of an issue over in Asia.
All right, and the next question, how many milliliters per inch was the imidacloprid applied for the double rate?
Yeah, and so with that, generally you get about 12 milliliters of Zytec per dBH inch. And with it, whenever you're using an imidacloprid product, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to which one that you're using, because certain products will have different percentages of AI. And so there are some imidacloprid products out on the market that are really low percentage AI. And so you're going to have to be using more of that in order to protect that tree. But for all of that, I would encourage everyone to follow the label recommendations. You're going to find all the information on there, but also with some of our diagnostic guides, we help kind of break that down, and we make that label language a little bit easier to understand, so you can take those out with you out in the field and be able to accomplish everything.
And next question is, does soil injected imidacloprid always need to be applied close to the trunk?
Yeah, that is a good question. For soil injected imidacloprid, you generally want to be applying as close to the trunk as possible. And the reason for that is because that's where the bulk of the fibrous roots are going to be found. And those fibrous roots are what's going to actually take up that product and move that through the vascular system to get protection within that canopy that you want to be having. Additionally, applying close to that trunk, it allows you to kind of evenly spread out the applications. Whenever you're applying soil applied insecticides, it's different than doing kind of like a fertilizer application where you're applying underneath the drip canopy. Because you're using such lower volumes relative to that what you would be doing with a fertilizer application, you want to be trying to get as close to those fibrous roots as possible right near that base of that tree.
So I apologize, that question came in two parts. So that was the first part of it. Second part with that one is one tool that they use recommends applying it starting at the root flare, then moving out in a circular grid pattern until the needed mixed product is used up.
Yeah, and so usually we'll start at the root flare. Like if I have an HTI soil applicator with me, I'll just kind of go around in a circle and put my 250 milliliter shots down in kind of an evenly spaced pattern throughout, just to kind of concentrate it as close as possible around there. But the other thing I would do, like if I don't have a soil applicator with me, imidacloprid can be applied via soil drench. And what I'll usually do is I'll take the back of a hammer and kind of dig a little moat around the tree, and as kind of close to that root flare as possible. And I'll just kind of pour it around there. And sometimes, if the soil isn't very porous, it takes a little bit for that to be taken down. So I'll pour a little bit in there, let the soil take that up a little bit, pour a little bit more until all of that's down. But the biggest thing is, as long as you're close to it, whenever you're doing insecticides applications, you don't want to be doing it in a grid pattern around the entire tree canopy. Just because you're not going to be targeting, the areas of the tree that you want to be targeting. And as you get further out into that canopy drip line, it is possible that other surrounding trees have their root systems going to that area, and you might have some unintended targets. So a surrounding tree might be taking up some of that product when you want it to be only going to that tree that you're treating.
Okay, next question. Do you have a chart with costs and what you charge for DBH for all three products?
Yeah, and so that would be something that I'd encourage you to reach out to me or reach out to your territory manager if you're aware of who they are. We're happy to provide some of that to you, and you kind of you can kind of see some of the breakdown for using some of the products, what it would cost for you to do some of these applications. But would be more than happy to discuss that with you and provide that information for you.
Next question, do we need to apply for a state pesticide applicator license to apply rainbow products? Great work on this webinar, by the way, thank you.
Well, thank you for that compliment. Yeah, so if you are going to be doing any sort of commercial treatments where you're selling a service, you need to have you need to be a licensed pesticide applicator. All of the products that we carry here at Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements carry a caution label, so it's kind of one of the lowest, you know, the EPA signal words with it. None of the products that we carry are restricted use pesticides. That's a big thing. But whenever you are doing applications in a commercial setting and are selling treatments, you need to have a pesticide applicator's license. But if you are a homeowner treating your own individual trees, because none of the products we carry are restricted use pesticides, they can be applied at an individual home level. But unfortunately, we only work with commercial companies.
All right, looks like we have a couple more questions left. Next one is, how much H2O are you using per soil injection?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the big thing is for the soil injections with whether you're going to be doing it with Zytect or with Transtect, water is just the carrying agent. And so you want to make sure that you're using enough water to actually kind of allow some of the distribution of it. Like, when you're using Transtect, Transtect comes in these water soluble packets. And so whenever I'm doing applications, I'm usually doing them with the HTI soil injector. And the HTI soil injector injects 250 milliliters at a time. And so usually I will kind of measure out my treatments. So I'm doing 1 full injection per dBH inch or 1 full injection per 2 inches dBH. And so that's mixing the relative amounts of Transtect or Zytect in 125 milliliters of total solution per dBH inch or 250 milliliters of solution per dBH inch. So it's kind of a roundabout answer to that question, but there isn't an exact amount that you need to use. It's just a carrying agent. But if you're encountering, really drought-like conditions in soil, I would encourage you to use a little bit more water, just to allow that the tree to be taking up some of that active ingredient. But that would be something I'd be more than happy to help give you some guidelines based on what you're dealing with. Those are some of the great things that our technical support can do, whether it be myself or any of the territory managers throughout the United States.
Okay, next question. Do your technicians spend any time chasing fluid in the Q-Connect lines into the injectors to ensure the tree has been treated with the full amount? Or also worded another way is, how do you ensure that the tree has received a sufficient amount of insecticide?
Yeah, so that is a good question. For our local technicians here in Minnesota, generally what they'll do is they don't chase it with anything. They'll put the amount of mectinite that is necessary in order to treat the tree based on the rate that they've decided. Kind of really dependent on the level of infestation in an area. And whenever you're doing those applications, sometimes what you'll find is there'll be a couple milliliters maybe, or maybe like a milliliter or so that might be left in the lines afterwards. But we haven't found that that has had a significant impact on the protection of these trees. You can feel confident that, if, as an example, if you're using a medium rate of 5 milliliters per dBH inch for, treating an ash tree with mectinite, and it's a 20-inch tree, so you're putting in 100 milliliters total if you're treating at that medium rate. If you're doing that injection, you're going to get the vast majority of that into the actual tree. And we haven't found that it's necessary to kind of chase each individual tree with water to ensure all of that has been taken up. Now, I would encourage you if you are doing applications with the Q-Connect or really any sort of injection system, at the end of the day to kind of flush out some of those lines and chasing that into into the tree, just because if you leave product in there, sometimes it can kind of gunk up a little bit. And it's just a good practice to kind of clean out the lines with water. One of the big differences with Mectinite compared to some of the other ones is you can just clean out those lines with water. You don't need to have an alcohol solution going through.
All right, that looks like that is all we have for questions.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you everyone again for taking the time out of your day to attend this session. Feel free to take down my email, my phone number. Feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email if you have any additional questions. I am more than happy to answer them and talk about anything plant healthcare related.
All right, thanks everybody.